This is Gemara and Eruvin, Daf Yud Gimel. Again, apologies for all the technological glitches from Friday's Daf. Although I hope most of you, by the time you logged on this morning, it was there and all available. And just a reminder again, it's available on the podcast, Torah Anytime, and YouTube. Usually Torah Anytime, then podcast, YouTube. Today was the verse. Mirz Hashem, everything should go smoothly from here on in. Again, once again, the learning of the Daf Yomi for the Chodesh of Elul is sponsored as Chus for Shleim for Shana Teva Bas Esther, as well as Chus Lias Nishmasal Esther Rizel Bas Rav Meir. And of course, our Chaylim Yudamir Ben Akir Menel Vigel Chaim Vermin Chanid Chaim and Sayer Shalom Sibin Izay Dos Arbas Kanendo Devasim Chaim Sayer Chaim Sayer Yisrael Ben Mindel. That is the president of Leatina Bachayos so Sayer Shalom is Astomi Shav Fego Bashir Khan ever fall Dovani Triva Shan Teva Sayer Shachali Yisrael. Again, if there are any issues, please feel free to reach out. Although again, I hope that B'siyat Shemaya everything should go smoothly. We pick it up from the bottom of Yud Beis and Beis Baruch Hashem, a little bit of an, I want to say easier daf today, but a little bit of an easier daf today. Bottom of Yud Beis and Beis Mishum Yishmael Amar Talmud Echad. One Talmud said in the name of Rabbi Yishmael. So says the Gemara, we pick it up in Yud Gimel and Aleph, top line, Rabbi Kiva Omer. Says Rabbi Kiva, Al Zev Zen Echliku, that this is what the Talmud said in the name of Rabbi Kiva. The Yishmael, the name of Rabbi Kiva, that what? And they argue on both things. This was back in the Mishnah, what the size of the Mavli is, when do Beishami Beisil disagree. Says the Gemara, Rav Kiva Hainu Tanakama, comes out that doesn't seem like there's any difference in Rav Kiva and the Tanakama, whether they're arguing whether it's smaller than 4 or not. Says the Gemara, what's the difference between these two opinions of Rav Kiva and Tanakama's Rav Achli, or those who said that it was Rav Yechiel, which was what we saw yesterday? Which actually we can just see it in the top Rashi over here. Rashi says, 2 lines on the top, Mavi Pachs Merba Tfachim. When a Mavi is less than 4 Tfachim, we have a Machlekes, Rav Achli, and Rav Yechiel taught us that some hold you don't need anything in that opinion, in that case. So that would be the Machlekes of Kiva and Tanakama, whether a Mavi less than 4 Tfachim, again by the door, by the opening, whether you're going to need anything. And the Gemara says, we don't know which opinion is which. Tani, we learned to the Brayso Amar Rav Kiva. You give them about 4 lines down. Rabbi Shmuel Davar Zeh. Rabbi Shmuel did not say this. He said Talmud. Rather, it was a Talmud who said this. Amar Davar Zeh. But Allah is a Talmud. It wasn't Rabbi Shmuel. Rather, it was a Talmud, and the Lach is like that Talmud. Says the Gemara, Hakuva Kasha. That sounds like a kasha. Amri, you said, I'm sorry, that is a question. Amri, you just said, Rabbi Shmuel didn't say this, rather it was a Talmud, which is a way of teaching us what Talmud less looks like I say. That's a way of saying it wasn't Rabbi Shmuel, it was a Talmud who made the mistake. But other Amri, then you told me Allah is a Talmud. Then he said, that's the halachas. What's going on over here? Is it the halacha or is it not? Amr Rabbi Yehuda, Amr Shmuel, loy Amr Rabbi Kiva, el chadid ba talmidim. Really, the halacha is not like that Talmud. Why did Rabbi Kiva say Allah is a Talmud? Was to give him a shvach, to give him a praise, so that other Talmidim would come along and say nice things. And really, the svara the Gemara wanted to say is correct. However, that is not the halacha l'maisa. Rav Nachman Yitzchak near in Itmar just meant it appears that way, but it's not really the halacha. Amar Yishmael ben Levi. So now, once we find that we have Talmidim saying things over the name of their Rabbeim, or Talmid of Rabbi Shmuel, Talmid of Rav Meir, Rabbi Kiva. Now says the Gemara, Amar Yishub ben Levi. Kol Magshat Amaitze Mishum Rabbi Yishmael Amar Talmud Echad. Anytime throughout Shas, as we begin our beginner journey, Baruch Hashem, we're a few months in, we're still at the beginning of the journey. But anytime that we find that someone says something over in the name of Rabbi Yishmael, a Talmud named Rabbi Yishmael, Lifnei Rabbi Kiva, or in front of Rabbi Kiva, Einay El Rav Meir. There's one Talmud, there's a mayor who's saying this statement over the name of Rabbi Yishmael in the name of Rabbi Akiva. Shashim is a Rabbi Yishmael, but Rabbi Akiva, he was the Talmud of both Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva. So says the Gemara, anytime, something you have to keep in mind, anytime we find a Talmud named Rabbi Yishmael, a Talmud named Rabbi Akiva, who is talking? Rabbi Meir. The Tani went to the Brayso Amar Rabbi Meir. She says Rabbi Yishmael, and I was like Rabbi Yishmael, he said, Matzal kankantoim, the teicha diyah, I would put certain substances, kankantoim, inside the diyah, inside the ink when I was writing a Sefer Torah. V'lo David, Rabbi Yishmael didn't say anything to me. Shapasi to Rabbi Kiva, when I went to Rabbi Kiva, Asr Alai, Rabbi Kiva said, no, you're not allowed to put kankantoim, you're not allowed to put this item inside the ink, and the Gemara will explain exactly why. Says the Gemara, Asr Alai. Aini, is that true? That was the first story. So again, Rabbi Shmuel said seemingly it was okay. Rabbi Kiva said it was not okay. Aini says Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, Mishum Rav Meir, again the same Rav Meir. Sheisi Leimidis Rabbi Kiva. When I used to learn by Rabbi Kiva, I would put this kankantum inside the ink. And Rabbi Kiva didn't say anything. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Shmuel said to me, Beni Mamalachtacha. What's your job? Amarti Lai, I said to my Rebbe, Rabbi Shmuel Labler, I'm a Labler, I'm a scribe, I'm a Sefer. Amar Li, Rabbi Shmuel responded, Bini, Havizar b'melachcha, be very careful. Shemalachcha b'lecha shamayim, because you're doing God's work. Okay, Maybe you'll be missing one letter. You'll have one extra letter. That's destroying the whole world by having a Sefer Torah that is lacking at some level. Amarti Lais, Rabbi Kiva said, I responded back to Rabbi Ishmael, I have something. The Kankantim Shemai, and its name is Kankantim Shanimatil Techadiyah that I put inside the ink. Amar Li, so Yishmael responded back to you, what? You're allowed to put kankantim inside the yai? Valara Amar Torah, Vikasav says you should write the Torah, Umacha, and it has to be erased. Ksav Sheyachal Limsa, it has to be a ksav, a writing that potentially could be erased. And that's the end of the brisa. So first of all, already we see the question over here, because in this brisa, Rabbi Kiva didn't say anything, and Rabbi Shmuel said something. Now we don't know exactly what happened over here with Rabbi Shmuel, as the Gemara, there's a little bit of a cryptic conversation here. Rishon said, what do you do? He said, I'm a scribe, I put in kankantum. Rishon said, what do you mean? But it has to be able to be erased. And that was the end of it. So now the Gemara is going to go in and figure out what was that conversation between Rabbi Ishmael and his Talmud. But we already understand what the question is going to be, that it seemingly is a steer in stories. Was Rabbi Ishmael the one that was not happy with it, or was it Rabbi Akiva? Says the Gemara, 7 lines before the wide lines, my kamer lei, or my kamahadr lei. What did Rabbi Ishmael say to the Talmud of Meir, and what did he answer? This is what Rabbi Ishmael said to him. Loi mi boy, it's not enough. I'm sorry, this is what Rameir said back to his Rabbi Yishmael. Meaning, what was Rameir's answer when he said, I have this thing called kankantum? Again, Yishmael said, be careful, you're doing God's work. Rameir said back, oh, I have this thing kankantum. Says the Gemara, don't worry, I'm not going to make a mistake, I'm a baki. But even to be careful about a zvuv, a fly, don't worry. Maybe the fly is going to come and land on the edge of the dalit, and he's going to raise the edge of the dalit, and the dalit will become a race. So says Rabbi Meir to his Rabbi Yishmael, don't worry, even that I took care of. Why? And its name is kankantum, that I put inside the ink, and I make sure that even if a fly were to land in it, it won't erase the ink. And that was the end of the conversation. And that's how Rav Meir told his Rabbi Yishmael, I'm extremely careful with the work that I do. So now that we finished explaining the brisa, the Gemara goes back to what we're discussing. Kasha, first white line, shimush hashimush, kasha, asha, asra, asra. We have a double question here. We have a question, who's the one that says it's asr? Is Rabbi Shmuel or is it Rabbi Kiva to put this kankantum, this substance inside the diyai? And as well, kasha shimush hashimush, what happened over here? Did Rameir first learn by Rabbi Shmuel and then learn by Rabbi Kiva? Or did Rameir first learn by Rabbi Kiva and then learn by Rabbi Shmuel? Because in each story it was reversed. Says the Gemara. Why mikar atalamed asali kamid Rabbi Kiva? First, I'll tell you what happened. First, Rameir went to Rabbi Kiva, and Rameir was not able to understand his Rabbi Kiva. He was too in depth. He used to say things. He used to prove one side of the coin and then disprove it, and it was hard to know exactly where Rabbi Kiva held, and he wasn't grasping where Rabbi Kiva is learning. So what did? He left, and also the kamid Rabbi Shmuel. So you went to learn by Rabbi Shmuel, the third wide line. Gemara, and then he learned all the he learned from Rabbi Shmuel. Then he went back to Rabbi Kiva, and then he was able to understand what Rabbi Kiva was saying. So first of all, the fact that we find stories, first Rabbi Shmuel, then Rabbi Kiva, first Rabbi Kiva, then Rabbi Shmuel, that's not a question, because really he went back and forth. Fine. Ella, asra, kasha. But what are we going to do with the fact that first Rabbi Kiva was the one that said it was mutter, then Rabbi Kiva was the one that said it was asr? Says the Gemara, kasha, you're right, that indeed is a question. And that's how the Gemara leaves it. So Tanya, once we're discussing putting this kankantium inside this diyai, this substance which we've saw a moment ago, Rameir said, I'm so careful to put this in, and therefore the ink will not disappear. If a fly falls into the Gemara, goes in to a bit of those halachas. Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rameir Omer. Rabbi Yehuda says in Rameir, L'chol matilin kankan l'teichad yai. You're allowed to put kankantium, the substance, to make sure the ink does not get erased. You're allowed to put into everything. Chutz mi parsha saita. Aside from the parsha saita. Why? Because we know the saita, if there was a disagreement, if the husband and wife, she accused her, then what does she have to do? We have to erase that parsha, and then she has to drink from it. So that has to be able to be erased. You're not allowed to put in parsha saita. That's what Rabbi Yehuda said, named Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yaakov Eimer comes along Rabbi Yaakov, and he says Mishmai, the name of Rabbi Meir, Chutz mi parsha saita shavim mikdash. Not all the Parsha Saita in the Beis HaMikdash, that you're not allowed to write with this Kenkantum. Says Gemara, what's the difference? What's this machlekes of Yud and Rabbi Yaakov? Rabbi Yirmiyah limchik la min ha'Torah yikbinayu. The machlekes is about erasing it from a regular Sefer Torah. Meaning, do we need to write a special Sefer Torah, a special ksav, a special piece of parchment for the Saita to be erased? Or can we take any Sefer Torah? Meaning, is it a special Sefer Torah in the Beis HaMikdash? That's what Rabbi Yaakov held. And he said that's the reason why that Torah, by that parsha, by Saita, you can't write this Kenkantum. Whereas if you held, no, you can write in any Sefer Torah, and that's the reason why you have to always be careful not to write the Parsha Saita with this Kenkantum. Says the Gemara, V'hani Tanoi, about 10 lines down, first one line is V'hani, and these Tanoim are like these Tanoim. The Tanya we learned in a Brisa. Ein Megillah Kasher Lahashkas B'Saita Acheres. One Megillah, one Parsha of Saita is not kosher to a drink, to erase for another Saita. So that's going to be the opinion of the second opinion of Rabbi Yaakov. No, it could be kosher for another Saita, meaning it comes from any normal Sefer Torah. That's seemingly the Gemara wants to say that these Tanaim hold like these Tanaim. As everyone's starting to realize it's not absolute the proof. And that's what the Gemara now says. Amar Papa, what's the proof? Maybe there it was written for one specific person. So that's the reason why you can't use it for another person. But what's the proof? Maybe a Stam Sefer Torah, you're allowed to use it. So what's the proof? It has to be established with Sefer Torah by the Beis HaMikdash. Amar Nachbar Yitzchak, another reason why it's not absolute. At least it was written for a Saita, meaning that we say it the other way around. But a regular Sefer Torah, not a Torah in the Beis HaMikdash. This Lamid Ksiva that was written just to write, maybe it would not be enough. And therefore, the Gemara says these Tanaim do not necessarily, these two machlekes in whether it was a special Sefer Torah in the Beis HaMikdash, whether the Parsha Saita has to be written for this specific couple, is the two Tanaim are not necessarily arguing about the same point. Says the Gemara in the last line, "V'les leil Rav Acha bar Oishia haditz nan." Does Rav Acha bar Oishia not hold of that which we just of the following Mishnah? Again, Rav Acha bar Oishia, if you want to look 8 lines up, he was the one that said Megillah Kashira Lashka Saita Acheres, that you're allowed to use one Megillah for another couple. If you write it for one, you're allowed to use it for the other one. Let's say she decided not to drink or something like that, then you can use it for someone else. Says the Gemara, is that true? It's now we learned in the Mishnah. Kosav Get Ligarishis Ishtay. Someone writes a get to divorce his wife. Moving along to Yud Gimel Amid Beis. V'nim lach, and the person changes his mind and he does end up divorcing his wife. And now he has a get. So what does he do with his get? Umatza ben Irai, and he finds Umatza ben Irai. He finds someone else in his town that has the same name as him, and he says to him, Shemcha Kishmi, your name is like my name. Shemishtacha Kishmishti, and your wife's name is like my wife's name. And therefore he says, you're getting divorced, let me give you my get. But he says, the Mishnah, you can't use it. The get has to be written for this specific couple. So the Gemara is bothered. Why did Rav Acha tell us when it came to drinking the Saita, erasing the Parsha Saita for this couple, it does not have to be specific for this couple, but by get it has to yes be specific for this couple. The Gemara answers, what's the connection? No question. By get, the kosav loksiv. It says you have to write for her. And therefore, from there we learn out, meaning ksiva lishma. There's a special din of lishma by it. It has to be written with intent, it has to be written for this person. Halcha by saita ve'asa loksiv. It says it's to be done for this couple. Bina nasiya lishma. It also has to be done lishma. But what part has to be lishma? The asiya. What's the asiya? What's the doing? What's the performance of the saita? Asiya didam mechikehi. That is the erasing, and that has to be lishma, but not necessarily the writing of the parsha. And therefore, it's not a question of Rav Acha Oishia. Now we go back to what we were discussing. Who is that? Rameir. Because again, Rameir said something over in the name of Rabbi Shmuel in the name of Rabbi Akiva. As two Rabbeim, the Gemara went along to discuss who was he first at. We had a stira. We ended with the kasha. Then the Gemara took a left turn and discusses this thing Kenkantum, which Rameir spoke about that he put inside his ink. Now the Gemara goes back into this great person named Rameir. It's revealed in front of the one that said, and the whole world was God. There was no one in the world of in the generation of Rameir like himself. Or 8 lines down, first of all line is B'daira. What's the reason they did not set the halacha like Rameir? Because his friends did not always understand what he was talking about. He was that great, they didn't understand him. He was able to say something that was Tami Tar and convince them, and therefore that's why we don't necessarily paskin like Rameir, but it does not diminish from his greatness. Tahana, we learned in the Mishnah, now more about Rameir. Loy Rameir Shema, his name wasn't really Rameir. El Rab Nuhu Rai Shema, his name was Rab Nuhu Rai. V'lamadikar Shema Rameir. Shumeir Eini Chachamim Ba'alacha, because he enlightened all the eyes of the Chachamim with Alacha. And now the Gemara continues, and in true of Loy Nahai Rai Shema, his name wasn't even Rab Nuhu Rai. El Rab Nechemia Shema. V'am Rav Lasben Arach Shema. V'lamadikar Shema Neharai. Similar to the word Meir is the word Naharai, that it's a Menayer that enlightens the eyes of the Chachamim with Alacha. Amar Rebbe. Says Rabbi, now we go along to say other great things about different Tanaim and Amoraim. Says Rabbi, you know why I was so sharp? I was sharper than my friends. The Chaziti Rameir, tracing it back to Rameir, because I saw Rameir me'achayre. I saw the back of Rameir. I sat behind him in Shir, and just seeing the back of Rameir made me so smart. And let's say I would have seen the face of Rameir, I would even be able to be more smart. I'd be able to even know more Torah. Why? Says Marecha, your eyes should see your Rebbe, should see your master. And from there we learned the Maila of seeing the Rebbe, and Rebbe told over that if he would have seen the face of Rameir, he would have even been greater. There was a Talmud to Rameir, his name was Sumchus. Anything that was Tama, you would say 48 reasons it was Tami. Anything that was Tar, 48 reasons that it was tar. Tana says the Mishnah Talmud Vasika Yabiyan, there was an old Talmud in Yamna Shem Tar says Sharetz, that he would tell a Sharetz. Sharetz was something which is the quintessential Toma, and he would say a reason it is tar. But may have a Chamshin Taima with 150 reasonings. Amar Avina, no Adin Vatarena, I'll judge and I'll make it tar. Uma Nachashem Mimis, Umar Betoma, Nachash can kill, and it increases Toma when it touches something. Tar, yet it is tar. Sharetz in Mimis, a Sharetz which doesn't kill, Umar Betoma, like Kolshkin, and it gives off Toma. Certainly it should give off Toma. V'lo, he says, the Gemara, Ma'is Ba'alma, that we have no proof from a snake, because a snake is just doing Ma'is Ba'alma, it's just like a thorn, it's just killing, but it doesn't necessarily show a Maila to it, which would show a din about Toma. And again, exactly what this means, 48 reasons Toma, 48 reasons Taira. Taisus over here discusses many of the Farshim try to figure out what does it mean he can make a sheretz tar, but one thing it certainly is showing is the wonderful greatness of these Talmidei Chachamim, how they were able to know the depth of Torah at such a level. Amar Rav Abba, about 5 lines further wide lines, Amar Shmuel, Shalosh Shanim Nechlu Beishami Beis Hillel. For 3 years, the camp of Beishami, the yeshivas of Beishami, the yeshivas still argued. Halalu Amir Malach K'Maisenu, Halalu Malach K'Maisenu. This one said the Lach is like us, and this one said the Lach is like us. Yatza Baskel, this was the Baskel we spoke about a few blot ago when we discussed if the Lach is like Beis Hillel, V'Amra, Eilabelu Divrei Elikim Chayim. Both of these are the word of God, both the word of Beis Hillel and the word of Beishami. Elu Elikim. But the Baskel concluded, but the Allah is like Beis Hillel. Says Gemara, 1 second. If the word of God is like both Beishami and Beis Hillel, why was Beis Hillel Zeicha? Why do they merit that the Allah follows them? They were calm and they were able to be soivel, they were able to endure. How you? V'shoinim divreihem v'divrei Beishami. They didn't only study their own words; they studied the words of Beishami. Not only that, meaning Zamaila. Not only did they learn about themselves, they even learn about the other shita. Not only that, they used to say over the words of Beishami, the words of those who argued on them before their own words, and that's another reason we see the Maila of being calm, the Maila of being able to be safe, the Maila of saying over the opposing opinion before your own opinion. And the Gemara proves that Concise Shaninu in the third wide line, like that which we learned. Someone is in a sukkah and he has his head and his body in the sukkah, but the table is in the house. Beishami says that's not enough. If the table's in the house, it's possible. So Beishil said to Beishamai, Lo Kacha Yamaisa, was this not the following story? Shalcha Zikne Beishamai, Zikne Beisil, Lavakers of Yechlam and Hachornis. I'm sorry. That both the elders of Beishamai and the elder Beisil went to visit Yechlam and Chornis, and they saw him sitting in the manner like we just spoke about. And what happened? Amrula and Beishamai and Beishamai Misham Raya Avein Amrulai. What's the proof in that case? Meaning they thought Beisil was bringing a raya in that case. They saw Yechlam and Chornis doing this, seemingly showing us that once your head and your body is in the sukkah, it's okay. Beishamai responded, "What's the proof?" Avein Amrulai. The elders told Yechlam and Chornis, Im Kacha Yisa Noig, like Hamtam is a sukkah miyamecha. The elders of Beishamai said, if that's how you've been sitting, you've never fulfilled the mitzvah of sukkah. Lila Mercha. And so what do we see from this story? We see that the Talmidim of Beisil said over the opinion of Beishamai. Lila Mercha, this teaches Shkolam Ashbel Atzmai, anyone who makes himself low, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Magbiya, Hashem is going to raise him up. Chol Magbiya Atzmai, someone who raises himself up, someone who makes himself haughty, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mashvila, Hashem will make him small. Chol HaMachzer Al Gedula, anyone who chases after greatness, the greatness runs away from him. However, if someone runs away from greatness, the greatness will chafe after him. Someone who pushes the hour, someone who forces the matter, the hour will push him. Someone who stays back and doesn't jump involved, then it will endure for him. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Brisa, for 2.5 years, Beishamai still argued, one said it's better that you were not created, better than you were created. Another opinion said, it's better to be created. They got up and they counted, and they concluded, really, it's better that we weren't created. More than us being created. But now that we have been created, what should we do? What a wonderful beginning to Chodesh Elul on the 2nd of Elul. Shabbos is Daf. Yefash Shemaisav, wonderful tshuva, wonderful Sat Shmaya, says the Gemara. What should you do now that we're created? You should check into your ways. You should check them. Different types of checking, as Mr. Sharma explains extensively. And the truth is, we're just going to start from the Mishnah on Sunday's Daf, because that's going to lead into a totally new discussion, and we'll pick it up from there.